All right, hello everybody. This is our writing equations notes. If you were at the choir concert or if we didn't get through it completely today in class, I figured I would make a video so that you definitely get the information that you need before our test on Tuesday. This is also a good tool for you if you're reviewing and studying for the test on Tuesday, that you come back, watch this, remember those key words that we're looking for. So this is actually our right side. The first side we're looking at is words that mean equals. Obviously there's equals, is, and is equivalent to. We know equivalent from our equivalent expressions. Something else I want you to remember that we reviewed mostly in class is that expressions versus equations. So the difference is one little thing. Expressions do not have an equal sign. And equations have an equal sign. One little difference, but it makes a huge difference when it comes up to having to tell the two apart. So remember that. Be very careful about remembering that. Okay. So our first example is plus. 4 plus a number is 12. Well, that's easy for us to see because 4 plus n equals 12. It sounds very similar. In this case, instead of just putting a number, we put n as our variable. We then solve, we draw our line, we're adding 4, so the opposite of adding 4, do your 1, 2s, add 4, the opposite would be to subtract 4. So subtract 4, n ends up equaling 8, which we see over here, n equals 8. And they graph that with a closed dot on the 8. Most difficult part, right? All right. So the words more than, increased by, and sum also mean addition. These are addition key words, guys. If we pay attention, then we will catch that whenever we're reading these word problems. More than. So, in this case, it's saying 5 more than a number that we don't know, so a number is 7. That is tells us equals, and 5 more than a number tells us n, our number, plus 5. If we solve this, the opposite of that would be to subtract 5 from both sides. We end up 2 equals n. The way we write that is n equals 2. To graph that, we just come over here, 1, 2, closed circle. A number increased by, so we have a number, n, increased by adding 7 is equivalent to or equals 23. And now we have a mathematical sentence. I tore this all apart. I looked at this. I said, okay, a number. I marked that as my variable n. Increased by. That means addition. 7 is equivalent to, that means equals, 23. All right, and if we solve this, subtract 7 from both sides, we end up with n equals 16. All right, sum. This says n plus 2 equals 5. So the sum of a number, because we don't know it, and 2 is 5. Now something that we saw very similar to this was actually your 610A practice, which talked about on number 7, it said the sum of a number, and they said the number was x, and 12 is -6. So you needed to know how to get this from this little sentence. And that's why I tell you, break it down. Look at the question, look at the sentence, and think about, okay, a number. In this case, they don't tell me what to use as my variable. We just used n. Increased by. That means add. Increased by 7 means we're adding 7. And that's equivalent to or equals 23. The sum, that's adding of a number, first thing, n, and 2, is 5. Equals 5. If we solve this, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides and figure out n equals 3. All right, when we're graphing n equals 16, this only goes to 10. So I'm just going to draw a line, make a mark, label it 16, and draw my closed dot. Again, closed dot on 3. Let's look at subtraction. The difference, less than, decreased by, very similar to increased by, and minus. Well, when we are reading this, we see n minus 5 equals 11. Well, how about we just write that? Instead of saying n, we'll call it a number minus 5 equals 11. You just wrote a verbal sentence for this mathematical sentence before you even wrote it down. You read it that way. So a lot of the times when we're looking at these things, we just need to think about, okay, what is it saying? What do I need to say? A number, n, decreased by, subtract, 7 is equivalent, which means equals, 10. All right, less than. This is the only one that it gets confusing because we've got 3 less than a number. Because if you think about it, you're going to subtract 3. So you need to say 3 less than a number is 5. Okay. I'm trusting that you can solve these, and once you solve, you can always graph. This is not, that's not the part that we're focusing on. I'm really focused on the fact that you need to remember these words and be able to get from this to this. So the difference of 12, first number, and a number that we don't know is, which means equals, 7. Okay, here's the thing. I don't want you to solve this one, which means I don't want you to graph it. This is technically a 2-step problem because we're subtracting our number that we don't know from 12. So don't solve that one. Okay. We're moving on to multiplication. Multiplication. The 3 words for multiplication are product, times, and twice. Now y'all know times. You already say this is 6 equals 3 times n. So we're going to write that. 6 is 3 times a number, because we don't just write our variable. 6 is 3 times a number, because we don't know what the n is, and we just know that n represents a number that we do not know yet, because that's what a variable is, a symbol or letter that represents a numerical value or a number. Okay, the product. The product of 4, so we're going to multiply 4 and a number we don't know equals 12. All right, notice I did not put a space between 4 and n. Typically when you see a variable in multiplication, there's not a multiplication symbol. You need to make sure that you understand 4 right next to n means you're multiplying 4 times your variable. All right, if we're going to solve this, we look at 4 times n. So if we're thinking our 1, we're multiplying by 4. If we're going to think about our 2, the opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4, and then we're going to do the opposite and keep the balance by doing it to both sides. So if we divide by 4 on this side, we divide by 4 on this side. And then we end up with n equals 3. And we graph it over here just like we did with our addition and subtraction. Okay. You understand times. I think you can solve this by doing your 1-2s. Let's look at twice. Twice a number is equivalent to 16. So twice. That means you're multiplying, but it's already telling you what you're multiplying by. You're multiplying by 2. So 2 multiplied by our number n equals, because it's equivalent to, 16. Now that we have that, you can solve that pretty easily. It's just understanding that twice means times 2. And last but not least, we have division. All right, so the big words that you're probably not as familiar with are quotient and the ratio of. Divided by is pretty simple. We read it as n divided by 7 equals 7. So, a number divided by 7, that looks like a 2, equals 7. Now typically if you're writing a verbal sentence, you will write out the 7s in letters. I just wrote 7 as numbers to save some space. And you can solve that because you know to do your 1-2s. What's the operation? Dividing by 7. What's the opposite? Multiply by 7. You're going to make sure to multiply by 7 on both sides to keep the balance. And you draw your lines. All right, the quotient of a number and 5 is 6. The quotient just means we're going to divide. And we're going to make sure what comes first is first in our mathematical sentence. So the quotient of a number that we don't know, so we're going to use n, and we know we're dividing, so we can use that division sign. The quotient of a number and 5, so n divided by 5, is 6. And then you do your 1-2s and solve. All right. The ratio of a number and 3 equals 5. This is where I think you might be a little confused. When you're talking about the ratio of a number, ratios can be written in 3 ways. You can write a ratio in colon form. You can write it in word form. Or you can write it in fraction form. The way that I want you to remember right now is fraction form. So we're going to write our division problem in fraction form to show division. The ratio of a number. The number n, whatever it is, our variable is going to go on top because it's mentioned first. So we have n divided by the ratio of a number and 3. Well, if we have our top of the ratio as n, the bottom of our ratio is 3. And that equals 5. So we solve this just like we did every other one. Since our first thing we're talking about, our 1, what is the operation? We're dividing by 3. The opposite of dividing by 3 is to multiply by 3. And if we do it on one side, we have to do it to the other. And 5 times 3 gives us that n equals 15. Again, you don't have enough space on here. It doesn't go all the way to 15, so just draw a line, mark it 15, and draw your closed circle, just like you did with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and now division. All right, so I really want you to make sure that all of these boxes are filled out, not for homework, but for the fact that you need the practice and the understanding for your test on Tuesday. This is a great tool for you to use on your review that you need to finish so that you can go over it on Monday. You'll receive a stamp if you have it completed, and that way I can find something to reward you for having done it before I posted all of the answers for you to watch. All right, guys, I hope you have a great weekend and that please, please, please be nice to the subs. And I'll see you on Tuesday for your test. Study, study, study.